Furries and Therians and Satyrs, oh my! Good morning, this is Lee Woofenden. Welcome to Spiritual Insights for Everyday Life. I hope you're having a good day today. The latest thing that young people are doing to annoy their parents is dressing up like animals and calling themselves Furries and Therians. And it's very effective at getting us older folks perturbed, and yet really I think it's mostly just some innocent fun, but it also is really nothing new. If you look back in the Bible, you find that it has a story of a talking donkey, which the atheists love to make fun of, and there's even a story of a king becoming like an animal. So what are these Furries and Therians? Well, if you confuse them and you call them by the other name, they'll get upset because they're really not quite the same. They're sort of the opposite sides of the same coin. Furries are people who like to anthropomorphize animals or to make animals into humans, and Therians are people who like to identify with or identify as animals. So they're not quite the same. When it comes to furries, sort of the classical book in this regard is the very well-known novel Watership Down, published in 1972 by Richard Adams, in which a clan of talking rabbits goes through various adventures. They're physically rabbits, but culturally they're like people. So this is an example of furries in a sense, where you have animals who are acting like people. But then on the other side, you have the indigenous cultures who commonly have rituals in which they identify with an animal. They have a spirit animal, and this goes back really thousands of years. So although it may be the latest trend, it's really not anything new, and it does have some spiritual significance. Now, in terms of the material side, of course, evolutionarily, we came from animals, and we have very much in common with animals. We are animals, but as humans, we have some higher levels built on top of that. We have higher levels of love and motivation. We have higher abilities of thought and rationality and spiritual thought and awareness that animals don't have. And our bodies have a higher level of dexterity and ability to do things that animals can't do. So we are animals, but we have a higher human level laid onto it. And from a spiritual perspective, according to Emanuel Swedenborg and many other writers in the spiritual realm, animals do have significance that relates to the human spirit. In the Bible, there are many animals that have significance. There's lions, there's lambs, there's doves, there's goats, there's sheep. There's all kinds of different animals, and each one of them has a different meaning relating to different characteristic or different type of people. So this idea of identifying with animals, it's not anything new, and it also has spiritual significance. Sheep, for example, are commonly associated with innocence and peace, lions with strength and power or the truth fighting, and right down the line you can assign different animals to different human characteristics because they actually are expressions of human characteristics that we all have within us. And so when pet lovers and animal lovers feel like animals have human characteristics and humans have animal characteristics, this is reflecting a reality. So in the Bible, yes, there's the story of the talking donkey. You can read it for yourself in Numbers chapter 22. And in the fourth book of Daniel, there's a story in which King Nebuchadnezzar, for a while, becomes like a wild animal. It says that he's under the dew of heaven and he eats grass like the ox, and his hair grows out like eagle's feathers, and his nails become like the claws of birds. So here's a case, this is an early example of what you might call a Therian, a human being who is being like an animal and living like an animal. So this is not anything new. And in Swedenborg's writings, there are also examples of humans that are sort of half animals. There's one story that happens in Marriage Love number 512, in which Swedenborg sees some Satyrs, which are a classical Greek half-human, half-animal being, and he sees them in the woods, and it turns out that they're just lecherous human beings because Satyrs are commonly associated with lechery and sexual desire among men. And he has a conversation with them, and he suggests that they send a couple of themselves off and see what they look like, because to each other and to Swedenborg close up, they look just like normal people. So they send a couple of them off, and when they come back, the guys are saying, "Oh, you guys look so funny," because at the distance they look like satyrs, but they look normal to themselves. So here's an example of humans who are kind of like animals. It's sort of a negative example, but it's still very much an example of the Therian idea that humans can become animals. And then also, on a nicer note, there's a story of Swedenborg going to one of the highest levels of heaven where people from a very ancient and innocent time lived, and he sees as he approaches their heaven ewes and rams, meaning sheep, that are grazing, and this represented the innocence and the peace of the people in that part of heaven. And also from a distance they looked like little children, even though they were adults, really, because little children are innocent, and the childlike nature of these angels, Jesus himself said, you must become like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. So these are some examples, both in the Bible and in Swedenborg's writings, of things that correspond to today's furries and Therians. And though us old folks might kind of roll our eyes at the whole business of dressing up like animals, it does have ancient roots, and I guess maybe there's some negative elements of it. There are of everything. But for the most part, I think it's just some innocent fun that also has some spiritual significance behind it. So I hope you found this interesting, and I wish you Godspeed on your spiritual journey.